every single wide receiver matchup for week 6. Let's get it and keep winning our fantasy football matchups. We'll start with tonight's matchup, Philadelphia versus the New York Giants. New York Giants. I love that movie. A.J. Brown. We're going to have him in the C tier. This is a good matchup for these Eagles wide receivers. The Giants have given up the third most amount of points to wide receivers in fantasy football this year. And so it's C tier for A.J. Brown. It's D tier for Devonta Smith. And really with Devonta Smith, like, you know, he's been the wide receiver one in that offense so far this year. From a target perspective, yeah, A.J. Brown has still continued to get targets, but it's Devonta Smith who has continually played better. It's Devonta Smith who has continually produced more. And so on the year, 36 targets for Brown, 30 targets for Devonta Smith. So obviously still from a target standpoint, but in terms of yardage, in terms of receptions, in terms of fantasy points, it's been Devonta Smith. So take with that information, do with it what you want. But both these guys are going to be starts for us this week. Again, C tier for A.J. Brown, D tier for Devonta Smith. On the other side of the ball, look, the Eagles, they're, top third in allowing points to fantasy football wide receivers in terms of they're good at not allowing them. But, the problem is we saw Darius Slayton get hurt there last week. I don't think he's going to play this week. Wandale, I mean, again, how much can you trust? It was actually Theo Johnson there, of all people, that got most of the volume. Wandale had 8 points on 95% snap share last week, and Philly's a tough matchup. I'm going to put him as a shaky start. Like, maybe you have to this week with bye weeks, but, like, Jalen Hyatt, no way. I'm not starting him. So realistically, I don't want to start either of these guys against the Philadelphia Eagles in this matchup. Wandale, there's a chance he has a ton of receptions always, and there's a chance he has a touchdown, of course, and somebody's going to score a touchdown here. But last week, Theo Johnson, I think, had 2. And so, really, I don't feel like I can rely on these wide receivers right now in fantasy football. So I'm just going to say, not really doing it for the Giants, but I will start the Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers on Thursday Night Football tonight.
So we got another morning game this week. We've got Denver and New York, the other New York, the Jets. It's not really any better there, but we have Cortland Sutton as a wide receiver 1 for Denver. He's looking to be one of the most consistent wide receivers in the NFL right now. Super reliable as a fantasy asset. Coming off a game against Philly, one of the better secondaries in the league, and he still had 17 points off of 10 targets, 8 receptions, no touchdowns. We would expect that to continue on what is, again, a difficult matchup with Sauce Gardner on the other side of the ball, but actually wide receivers have been decently productive against the Jets this season, kind of middle of the road. They've allowed like the 16th most amount of points to wide receivers, so it's really neutral for Cortland Sutton. I think he'll be fine this week. Not starting anybody at wide receiver beyond that. Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims are not consistent. C tier for Cortland Sutton. C is for Cortland Sutton. Garrett Wilson also going to be in the C tier here. We have him in the same tier as Sutton, a little bit lower than normal this week because he actually has a really tough matchup against Denver. He'll be lining up against Pat Surtain this week, which is going to be really tough. They've allowed the second least amount of points to wide receivers this season, and in a matchup that's going to be tough for Garrett Wilson as a whole, and in an offense where Garrett Wilson doesn't get most of his production until garbage time in the fourth quarter, you're probably going to be on the edge of your seat seeing if Garrett Wilson is going to have kind of a bum game, or if he's going to save your week with a touchdown like he did last week. This is kind of what Garrett Wilson does all the time. They forget that he exists there until the fourth quarter when they're down by 30, and then they're like, oh, let's throw him the ball because he brings everything down. Nobody's startable beyond that.
So you went to Myrtle Beach, huh? Looking at the sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and every other middle-class family from Indiana ever.
At some point in time, I did go to Myrtle Beach.
Los Angeles versus Baltimore here. Obviously, Puka Nacua S tier, of course. No discussion to be had here. Devontae Adams B tier. You're starting him every week as well. It's a good matchup for these guys. Baltimore has been giving up a crap ton of points to wide receivers. One of the best matchups in fantasy football this year. Wide receivers against the Baltimore Ravens. Plug these guys in your lineups and do not think twice about either of them. On the Baltimore side, the Rams are exactly middle of the road in terms of allowing fantasy football points to wide receivers. And so, Flowers, I think you still have to start him. He still salvaged his day last week with Cooper Rush. Even if it is Cooper Rush, I'm still starting Flowers. He's just too good not to start, in my opinion, in fantasy football. On the other hand, Rashad Bateman's not startable, so he's going to be in the I tier for us. So F tier for Flowers, which is lower for us, but still a start. I tier for Bateman. Again, really, the Rams are must starts, and Flowers you're going to start. And outside of that, in this game, we're not going to start anybody else. So
Dallas and Carolina, we got the number ones on each side of the ball here. Dallas, we're going to operate under the assumption that George Pickens is going to be the starter there, the number one, and that CeeDee Lamb will take another week to start. All indications, again, are telling us we haven't heard anything about his practicing status this week. I would assume if he is even a go against Carolina this week, he's probably not going to practice much as he comes back from this ankle injury. again, we heard from Stephen Jones that he's within 2 weeks. No guarantee about him this week. We'll see if he comes back next week. But again, if CeeDee Lamb is playing and he's starting, you have to start him and put him in your lineup. But we would be comfortable, even if CeeDee Lamb comes back, starting both Pickens and CeeDee Lamb because they actually do kind of help each other in their production. But Jalen Tolbert, Ryan Florney, if CeeDee is out, we'll rank both of them, put them in the I tier if CeeDee doesn't play, but neither of them we're comfortable starting here. It's kind of a toss-up who's going to be the main producer there. Even after a big week from Ryan Florney, with CeeDee Lamb being out this week potentially, I wouldn't be super excited about flexing Florney. Tet McMillan on the other side, the wide receiver one there, he's getting most of the target volume. We'll put him in the D tier. He's not getting touchdowns right now, but he does have the best matchup possible for pretty much any wide receiver. The most amount of points have been allowed to wide receivers with Dallas's defense. Their secondary is in shambles right now. Hopefully it's a shootout for Tet McMillan's sake. And hopefully he can kind of raise his ceiling for what you've been used to seeing in the first 5 weeks of his career. Xavier Legette behind that in the J tier, not comfortable starting him.
Yeah, let's move on to the Arizona-Indianapolis game here. Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, it's not been great. Indianapolis is very bad against fantasy football wide receivers, and so Marv, you're going to start him. Obviously, this is kind of a, going against my dad's team type deal, so maybe he feels like, I need to actually catch some touchdowns this week and maybe break one tackle. So we're going to put him in the C tier here. I do wish he was on the Colts, but at the same time, sometimes I watch him and I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with him not being on the Colts right now. It's probably just Kyler, to be honest with you. But still, we're going to start him. He's in the C tier. Michael Wilson's not a start for us. We don't have him ranked. On the Indianapolis side of the ball, middle-of-the-road secondary for Arizona. Pittman's going to be a start. So you have to start Pittman probably the rest of the season. D tier for us. He's just continually performing, and he's a high-end wide receiver, too, at the moment. Josh Downs, we're going to have as a sit. With Downs, it's just too hit or miss. But even his hits, like you put them in quotation marks because, he had 11 points last week. That's the most he scored this season. And his other games, he's had 3, 5, 6 points. This might be an Arizona game where they end up running the ball a ton, and so I think the targets could end up going down for Josh Downs. And so because of that, we're going to have him as a sit this week as well. You can't reliably say to start Josh Downs with Tyler Warren doing what he's doing, Michael Pittman doing what he's doing in that offense. So we'll go sit for these guys this week. It's a better matchup for Marv, but Pittman's somebody you have to start as well in this matchup.
JSN in the Seattle-Jacksonville matchup is looking to be one of the best wide receivers rest of season in the NFL, and for you, obviously, in fantasy football. He'll be in the A tier in what is a neutral matchup against Jacksonville, kind of middle of the road in terms of production allowed. Cooper Kupp is kind of an interesting topic of convo this week. He had a 9-target game last week against Tampa, but only had 11 points. He's not getting a lot of red zone usage, and that took one of the most productive games that you'll probably see of the season. And Cooper Kupp, again, only dropped 11 points. So I would err on the side of sitting Cooper Kupp, honestly. I would only start him if you absolutely cannot help it. You're suffering from injuries and bye weeks, etc. in the same week, but we're probably going to sit Cooper Kupp, and anyone beyond that, Torrey Horton. Cooper Kupp will be in the H tier. BTJ going to be in the D's tier. Again, his target volume has not gone up. We saw the best week that we've seen from BTJ so far this season, and he still only scored 12 points and was kind of salvaged from a big catch at the end of the game. Hopefully, Jacksonville can continue productive weeks in the future. And again, this matchup against Seattle going to be pretty neutral, middle of the road in terms of points allowed for wide receivers. We're starting BTJ. Not planning to sit him this week. He still has very high upside. Travis Hunter, on the other hand, even after he had his best showing, like as a talent, you're like, dang, a nice catch, some nice after the catch ability too. Still only had 3 targets and 3 receptions, the second least amount of targets that we've seen all season for Travis Hunter, and 9 points. So he is not startable. We'll have him in the H tier, De'Ami Brown in the J tier.
Yeah, moving on to the next matchup. We've got Los Angeles and Miami. For this one, QJ is going to be a start. Ladd's going to be a start. Keenan Allen is going to be a start. Like, again, you just don't know who's going to be the odd man out, and all of them have ceilings that are high enough to where you have to start each of them every week. So QJ is going to be in the D tier, Ladd McConkey in the F tier, Keenan Allen in the F tier with Ladd McConkey. We're still going to have QJ as the highest ranked wide receiver here until further notice. On the Miami side of the ball, you have to start Jalen Waddle this week, who goes in the C tier. He's going to keep moving up for us. Not going to start Malik Washington in the J tier. This is a tough matchup for both of these teams. Both Los Angeles and Miami have been very good against fantasy football wide receivers this year. But that being said, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that you can't really say, I'm going to sit one of the Chargers wide receivers at this point. They're without Amar and Hampton. They're going to throw the ball a bunch, and so you have to plug him into your lineup. And then Jalen Waddle, I mean, after what he did last week, plus the fact that he's the only wide receiver there right now, fantasy productive. You have to start Jalen. You have to start Waddle. And so, look, tough matchup for both these teams, but I feel like you still have to start the guys we have been starting, and that's the 3 Chargers wide receivers and Jalen Waddle in this matchup.
So we've got yellow lights across the board for matchup offense in Vegas here for New England and New Orleans. We're definitely comfortable starting Stephon Diggs and Chris Olave on both sides of the ball here. Stephon Diggs really starting to come into his own as the lead wide receiver there after we had a couple of nice stints with like Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte to start the year. But now it's looking to be Stephon Diggs. He's getting really, really good target volume. We're comfortable starting him in the F tier. Chris Olave going to be in the D's tier here. Again, both of these guys, in theory, have cap ceilings because they're just not in super explosive, great offenses. But Drake May specifically is on the up here, and if he can continue his passing volume being at a decently high level, then Diggs is going to continue to get really high target volume as well on his end. But beyond that, Kayshon Boutte is the only relevant guy that you're thinking about there at wide receiver. You're sitting him. Rashid Shaheed has had a couple of double-digit games this season, 21 points last week against the Giants. In a neutral matchup this week against New England, you're looking at him always having the upside to score 15, 20 points if he gets a big play and gets a touchdown. His target volume isn't going to blow you away. Legit. I mean, he's looking better than Brian Thomas right now. So he will be in the G tier this week. He's going to be an iffy start. If you need to flex him, we're okay with that.
In the Cleveland-Pittsburgh game, we'll start with Jerry Jeudy. Sit. Isaiah Bond, sit. H and I tier for these guys. Straight up, even though it's a good matchup against Pittsburgh, you're not starting these guys. You just can't do it. On the Pittsburgh side of the ball, it's a decent matchup for DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin, but really, like, the only guy you can start is DK Metcalf, and we're going to sit Calvin Austin. Again, the utilization has been fine for DK, but it's not been great. He's still managed to produce because he's had some touchdowns on the year. He obviously came off of a big game right before the bye week against Minnesota in London. So you're going to start DK until further notice, but the rest of the wide receivers in this matchup, to be honest with you guys, I'm not starting any of them. It's going to be kind of a slugfest. It's going to be ugly. I don't expect a super high-scoring game here, to be honest with you. And, I think it's probably DK that benefits from this the most if he gets the early work in the game. And then after that, they could end up just running the ball, and the running backs might be the guys to start here. And so in terms of wide receivers, the only one I want to start in this matchup is DK, and the rest of them, I'm not starting my fantasy football lineup.
Another ugly matchup in terms of entertainment between Tennessee and Vegas this week, but actually going to be a little interesting to figure out which of these guys are we actually comfortable starting, because there's been a lot of up and downs with every single one of these players. Calvin Ridley, we are going to have in the F tier. I will give you the go-ahead to start him this week, just straight up, because you are playing against the Vegas Raiders secondary, which has allowed the 4th most amount of points to wide receivers this season. And you saw Ridley in a friendly matchup last week put up a good amount of production. He had 18 points on 10 targets, brought in 5 for 131 yards. I think he has that big play upside this week as well. Whereas Alec Iomanner, on the other hand, is kind of simmered down a little bit, and he has had 6 and 3 points the last couple of weeks with his target volume decreasing as well. Haven't seen a huge increase. It's been anywhere from like 4 to 7 targets every single week with Alec. So we'll put him in the G tier as a Met. And then on the other side, Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker, both going to be in the G tier at this point. Trey Tucker has actually had bigger weeks than Jacoby Myers has. And we're going to have them both in the G tier as Mez. Jacoby Myers, for 3 straight weeks, has been in the single digits. He's been really, really hurting you in your flex spot. And Trey Tucker has essentially been like a better version of Rashid Shaheed, honestly, in this offense, with that 40-pointer against Washington in week 3, but 11 points on 6 targets against Indy. And again, a secondary in Tennessee that's allowed a decent amount of production, top 12 production to wide receivers this season. I think if you want to take an upside shot with him, I'm fine with that. You're probably looking at the floor play being Myers and the upside play being Trey Tucker in this matchup. All 3 of those guys, Alec, Trey Tucker, and Jacoby Myers, will be Mez this week.
All right, next matchup. Cincinnati, who gets Joe Flacco, versus Green Bay Packers off their bye week. Jamar's going to be a start, and actually T. Higgins, I'm going to label as a start as well. Flacco is expected to be the quarterback there this week, and I'm not surprised. I knew they brought him in to do that. He's a quick learner. That's part of the reason we went and got Flacco. And so I'll start both these guys and see what Flacco does in week 1. I think T. Higgins is going to be much better with Flacco than he was with Jake Browning. I think Flacco's decision-making is going to be twice as good as Jake Browning's was. And even though he's going to get crushed behind that offensive line, he still has more experience dealing with things like that, and it's Joe Flacco. He is undoubtedly an upgrade from Jake Browning, who was playing some of the worst football I've seen from a quarterback in a long time. And I watched Anthony Richardson. Romeo Doubs in the F tier. Look, I'll put meh for him and Golden here. They're playing the Bengals, right? So if you want to plug them in, do it. I'm not gonna say start for Wicks here. I'm gonna say sit. But in terms of rankings, we have Doubs and Golden in the F tier. So is T. Higgins as well, by the way. Even though we've got T. Higgins as a star, it's more just me rolling the dice. Jamar in the B tier. And then Dontavion Wicks we have in the I tier. So again, I want to start the Bengals wide receivers. I'm okay starting the Green Bay wide receivers, but they're shakier just because you never know. Romeo Doubs could have 20 points or he could have 5. Matthew Golden could have 1 point or he could have 11. Who knows? Matthew Golden may have 20 because he may have a big long touchdown this game. I don't know. But realistically, like, even though it's a very good matchup against Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Bengals have allowed the 13th most amount of points to fantasy football wide receivers. It's not like it's a slam dunk matchup. They're probably going to end up running the ball a whole lot. It's going to be a Jacobs game here. So, realistically, again, Chase and Higgins are the guys I'm starting in this game.
So, San Fran's wide receiver room has been in shambles since the start of the season. Ricky Pearsall has been banged up. We are going to assume that Ricky Pearsall is going to be a go this week. We'll have him in the D tier. You will start him if he is playing. He's a number one option there. Kendrick Bourne, assuming that Ricky Pearsall plays, we will rank in the G tier. We'll list him as a meh. If Ricky Pearsall is a no-go, then I would be flexing Kendrick Bourne. He is literally the only guy left there, and he got so much target volume last week that it's like, okay, in the short run, until these guys come back healthy, no Kittle, no Pearsall, like, we'll go ahead and start Kendrick Bourne. But again, if Pearsall's a go, going to be a little more iffy with Kendrick Bourne's outlook against Tampa Bay. On the flip side, Tampa Bay, we got Emeka Egbuka in the B tier in what is a neutral matchup against San Fran's secondary. I mean, he's going to continue his production until he doesn't. So you can guess when those touchdowns are going to stop coming. But when those touchdowns stop coming, he's getting a good enough target volume and is explosive enough that he can still score like 14 points without a touchdown. So I do think his floor is a lot higher than people are giving him credit for right now. Chris Godwin at this point is a meh in the G tier as well. You saw him have 10 targets in his debut back from the injury, back to earth with like only, I think, 5 targets his second game. So I don't feel super comfortable starting Chris Godwin. I think his floor is a lot lower than what you were looking at last season with how productive Emeka Egbuka has been.
Detroit and Kansas City will be one of the better games this week. Man, Kansas City has had a tougher schedule to start the year here, and obviously they need to win this game too. It's going to be tough. Start with Detroit. Kansas City's very good against wide receivers. Amon-Ra still a start. He's still been one of the best top 3 wide receivers in fantasy football this year. J-Mo, we've got in the G tier, and everybody else in the G tier is a meh. J-Mo's got to be a meh here. It's a tough matchup against Kansas City for him. I do think J-Mo probably will have a decent game, so I'm okay if you plug him in, but you just have to know that you're risking him not scoring you any points every time you start Jameson Williams at this point. So a G tier for him, A tier for Amon-Ra St. Brown. On the other side of the ball, Kansas City has a very good matchup here. Last week without Rashee Rice, I'm going to say start Xavier Worthy while you still can, and confidently say he's going to score points. He had 11 points last week. I think that's probably his floor. I think he has a good game in this game, and I think they're going to get in a shootout. Tyquan Thornton, I'm going to put as a meh as well. Marquise Brown, I'm going to put as a sit. I'm more confident in Thornton. Thornton is actually the wide receiver 26 in the season, and he tends to get a big play or two every game, and it kind of boosts his value. So if you have to plug him in this week, I'm fine with it. I think in this game, too, they're going to be taking a lot of shots. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I think these wide receivers in the Kansas City offense are going to benefit from that. And using that logic, I think Jameson Williams is kind of the same thing. The problem is J-Mo should have been in games like against Baltimore where he should have scored a lot of points and just didn't. And so it's just shaky. But, the wide receiver ones here, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Xavier Worthy, I'm comfortable starting them. I'll say mez for the wide receiver 2s, and I'll sit Marquise Brown in this one.
So we got Buffalo and Atlanta. Interestingly enough, Atlanta has allowed the 5th least amount of points to wide receivers. And when we get to the running back video, the least amount of production to running backs all season. I think Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman this week are both a little bit iffy. Khalil Shakir has actually been consistent the last few weeks. His target volume has been anywhere from 4 to 9 targets with 14, 17, and 11 points. 2 touchdowns when he had 14 and 17 points against Miami and New Orleans. No touchdown back against New England. And now a really, really tough matchup against Atlanta this week. I don't know what we're going to see with these wide receivers, and with Kincaid now getting a lot of work as well. I mean, Kincaid could outproduce both of these wide receivers. We've got other guys, again, that I mentioned here, like Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker also in the G tier. Chris Godwin in the G tier. I think any of those guys are just as viable options to start as Shakir and Keon Coleman this week, just given how unfriendly the matchup is for these receivers on Buffalo's side. But for Atlanta, Drake London, a must start every single week. He'll be in the B tier. Darnell Mooney coming off a hamstring injury. He'll be in the H tier because H is for hamstring. Don't feel super safe about starting him this week, but he does have some high upside as well. I will also list him as a meh, and what's looking to be a neutral matchup for Atlanta with Buffalo's secondary.
And then last matchup, we have Chicago versus Washington. Rome Odunze coming back off a bye week. You're going to start Rome Odunze. DJ Moore's a meh. He's not been good. He's in the F tier for us. A tier for Rome Odunze. And then Luther Burden's in the J tier. Not really looking to start him either this week. So we're going to put him as a sit. Debo's a must start. You're going to start Debo until you literally can't. There's no Terry on this document, but as far as I had heard, Terry McLaurin was supposed to come back this week.
They're optimistic for week 6.
I think he's playing this week.
But,
I mean, I would be very surprised if he didn't. So I'm going to put Terry. I'm going to put Terry and Debo on the graphic here, and I'm going to say start Debo, start Terry in this matchup.
I'd probably put Terry in the same tier as Ricky because he's just as
at this point, yeah. And so we'll slide him in here.
Tier.
But I will say, like, I'm starting Terry this week with all the bye weeks. Like, and I feel pretty comfortable with it as well. And with Jaden Daniels back, I feel a lot better about that. So start for Debo, start for Terry, start for Rome. DJ Moore's a meh. Luther Burden is a sit for us this week. And so that's all the matchups. It gets a little bit easier each week because now we're starting to get solidified utilization data to tell us if we can comfortably start or sit matchups. And also the good and bad matchups in fantasy football are starting to take shape and solidify themselves as well. So if you enjoy the video, please drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll do these videos as long as they're helpful to you guys. But it helps us to know that they are helpful to you, and we would look at our likes, we'd look at subscribers gain, stuff like that, to see if people actually enjoy these videos. So hopefully this helps, but go win your matchup. We'll have the running backs version of this tomorrow morning. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you here soon.